and at the A1 ring is now tied on points with the man who occupies the seat in that car, Bruno Junqueira. He's been the championship leader since he won for the first time at Barcelona back in May. He won in 3 races on the trot there, Barcelona, the Nürburgring, and at Monaco, to really fire himself to the top of the points table. And when they went on their mid-season break, as the Formula One cars went away to Canada, he was the championship leader by 2 clear race wins. Well, let's look back at last time out. This is a fortnight ago, Spielberg in Austria. Watch the lights and watch Jeffrey Van Hooydonk and David Saelens on the front row of the grid. Off they went, and then a moment or two later, off went the lights, followed by the rest of the field. A jump start for the entire front row. I don't think I've seen that very often in my life, but certainly Van Hooydonk getting a bit of a crawl, and as Saelens decided he would have to nail it, so too did Van Hooydonk. Well, they led for the early couple of laps, but predictably enough, a stop-and-go penalty ruled them both out of contention, Saelens and Van Hooydonk. And that left Nicolas Minassian out front, and he was third on the grid, third at the first corner. Well, Minassian with Bruno Junqueira, the championship leader, right back down. That's not him, that's his teammate Jamie Malo, who is in the top 6. Junqueira down in 12th position. He'd had a wretched time the previous weekend at Magny-Cours. We were to see a couple of safety car situations. The first for this incident, Christijan Albers losing control as he tried to avoid the spinning Andre Coto at the final turn and rolling back across the track. Nicolas Minassian's healthily built-up lead evaporated to nothing, and as Albers walked back, the restart saw Justin Wilson, who had passed Darren Manning for seconds, trying desperately to pass Minassian for the lead, and it looked absolutely certain that he would do. Wilson was seemingly so much quicker than Minassian for the first lap and a half away from the safety car, and it would only be a matter of time, it seemed, before the Englishman would lead a Formula 3000 race for the first time. But it was not to be. Somehow, by the skin of his teeth, Minassian held on. It was nerve-wracking stuff for both team managers, undoubtedly, and real edge-of-the-seat action for the fans. Well, more edge-of-the-seat action further back. Sayali dropping himself off the road and out of contention, and taking Andrea Piccini out as well. Piccini down the inside of the Frenchman, who then decided to try and make the apex of the corner anyway, with the fairly predictable result of another crash and another safety car. Once more, Minassian's lead evaporated. This time, though, he was to be saved the torture of trying to fight off Justin Wilson in the closing few laps, because there was a back marker, Enrique Bernoldi, in the blue and yellow car between the two of them. Bernoldi very lackluster away from the restart. He really was holding up the battle there, and Justin Wilson saw any chance of taking the lead there disappear. Worse than that, Bernoldi got between Bruno Junqueira and the 6th place man, Fernando Alonso. Alonso was being held up by the other Petrobras car, Jamie Malo, and in the melee there, it was Petrobras driver Junqueira who got past the yellow machine of Alonso up into 6th place and a championship point, all that he needed to keep him in the lead, even if Minassian won the race. Then he got past his teammate. In 2 successive corners, he'd gone from 7th to 5th. Ahead of him, Mark Webber in 4th place, trying desperately to unseat Darren Manning in the red car for 3rd. But Bruno Junqueira's early race problems came back to haunt him. On lap 1, he'd flat-spotted a tyre, and right at the death, when it really counted, when Alonso was trying to get back that last point for 6th position, he locked up, ran wide, and Alonso had the place back. Minassian was never caught by Justin Wilson in any way in the closing stages, and he romped away to a 2nd consecutive victory. Wilson, a delighted best ever 2nd place. Darren Manning in 3rd, inches ahead of the man who beat him at Silverstone, Mark Webber. 5th place, Jamie Malo, and the final point to Fernando Alonso. So for the 2nd race in succession, the championship leader, Bruno Junqueira, failed to score a single point. 20 points ahead when they left Monaco at the end of June, when they left in the middle of July. Just 5 weeks later from Austria, he was tied on points by Nicolas Minassian. Minassian, the boot clearly on his foot now, making hay while the sun shone in Austria. And the Frenchman absolutely delighted with that. Justin Wilson doing his new sponsors a great deal of good. First time out on the car, and the Briton finishing in second place. But there is the way the championship is. Tied at the top, Webber the only other guy with a mathematical chance of winning in third. So the news we will see being made today, somebody must take the lead of the championship, unless of course Minassian and Junqueira fail to finish the race here. Well, that's possible, but unlikely. And perhaps the most interesting aspect of this is that both drivers, although they race for different liveried teams, are run out of the same factory in Norfolk. Supernova and the Petrobras team both run by the man who is now really the doyen of Formula 3000 team bosses. David Sears came into the championship from the Formula Opel Euro Series and has really made it his home ground.
Earlier in the season, I would say Junqueira obviously was having an upper hand, but now Nicolas seems to be fighting back, and quite honestly, anything can happen. Junqueira won the race here last year, so maybe he has the advantage, but who knows what happens. He can make a bad start and anything can change the race. So I believe both will have a good chance.
Well, Junqueira did indeed win here last year. He was on the outside of the front row and beat his teammate Max Wilson to take his first 3000 victory. Minassian, though, is the man who seems to be on a roll. They've each won 3 races, but Minassian's more recently. Race 1 was good, he said, at Imola. I won that one. Started from the front row. It's always important to win the first race. It gives you better motivation for the following ones. Well, Bruno Junqueira was on pole, but he made a tardy getaway, and Minassian alongside him in the first 4 seconds of the race did all he needed to do to win it. An hour later, he was still ahead. Mark Webber was the man who gave Bruno Junqueira most aggravation. As Minassian sped away, the battle for second intensified. And victory in the opening round of the championship was all the Frenchman wanted. Well, then I did 2 races that weren't very good, he says. I didn't score any points, and that was tough because then Bruno started to win. Well, Mark Webber won in Silverstone, but in Barcelona it was Junqueira who did the winning. Minassian second in Barcelona, second in the championship now. And this is when Junqueira really started to hit a fine bit of form. He moved on from Barcelona to the Nürburgring, and in the wet race he had luck on his side. Minassian certainly didn't. He retired early, failed to score, but Bruno Junqueira survived 2 huge wet weather spins and near misses. Clearly he had all the luck he needed that day. And by the time they left the Nürburgring, he was firmly in charge of the championship. On then to the streets of Monaco, third on the grid. He was helped by the first 2 drivers crashing each other out right at the first corner, and Junqueira never looked back. Everything was going his way. And as they came to the mid-season break, he was 20 points clear. Well, I managed to get back on top, he says, because I've won the last 2 races, and it's very important to have done that. Well, fastest during qualifying at round 6 of the series at Magny-Cours in France. He passed poleman Sébastien Bourdais at the start and took a well-deserved win on home ground to reignite his championship challenge. Junqueira was 13th. And by the time they got to Austria, there was just 10 points between them. As we've just seen, Minassian won there, and again Junqueira failed to finish. And the gap of a substantial 20 points 2 races ago had evaporated to nothing. Junqueira hadn't managed to score a single point. And as they leave Austria to come here to Hockenhien this weekend, there is nothing between the 2 of them. 3 wins apiece, and clearly it looks as though this is going to be a 3-race dash for the cash between the 2 of them. Looking back to last year, Max Wilson, the Brazilian, leading all the way from his countryman, the number 2 driver, if you like, Bruno Junqueira in the Petrobras team. But Junqueira didn't see it that way, and I think he caught Max Wilson rather off guard at the end of the run out of the forest into the stadium section, getting the lead and not giving it back.
Yeah, I like this track, and last year I got my first Formula 3000 win, and I hope to do it again this year.
Well, will he be able to repeat? Certainly qualifying didn't help him in that endeavour, but then it didn't help Nicolas Minassian either. They are both down in the teams.
It's a little bit different. You did a little bit improvement of the car, but basically you'll be the car will be very, very near of the car that I used last year.
Unless, of course, it's wet in the intense battle. Are there any orders between the teams? I don't think so. David Saelens has been pretty quick this year, and he's been as anxious to win races as Nicolas Minassian. And it's possible that he could take away points that Minassian might want. As soon as he gets to the track, he says it's every man for himself. In this category, you really have to look after yourself. You can't wait for team orders, because if there are team orders, he said, that's bound to cause problems between us. So the Petrobras team versus the Supernova team. And we return after this break to catch up on qualifying and find out just what happened. The Grand Prix circuit of Hockenhien, the venue for the 8th round of the Formula 3000 Championship. The cars are getting ready in the pit lane at the moment to go out on track for the start of this 31-lap race, which is going to be so crucial to the hopes of both title contenders, Minassian and Junqueira, and possibly also to third-place man Mark Webber. Well, to take us around the circuit, we have roped in the Supernova driver David Saelens. Let's see how he sees Hockenhien.
Hello, my name is David Saelens. Welcome to the 8th round of Formula 3000 Championship in Hockenhien. I'm very happy to present you a lap around the circuit. So we start in the first corner, and this is a corner we manage in 4th gear at 170 kilometers per hour. Then we shift up to the Jim Clark curve. The top speed in this straight is 300 kilometers per hour. We brake at approximately 80 meters to shift down to 2nd gear, and the chicane we take it at 100 kilometers per hour. Then we shift up again to 5th gear with a top speed of 290 kilometers per hour to shift down again to 2nd gear in the Ost curve. We take it at approximately 100 and 105 kilometers per hour. Then again, at the exit there is some good positive banking, which allows us to accelerate very early and get quite high top speed again of 290 kilometers per hour. In the Ayrton Senna curve, we shift down again to 2nd gear and take the chicane at 100 kilometers per hour to shift up again to 5th gear and the top speed of 295 kilometers per hour, and then we enter into the stadium with the speed of 160 kilometers per hour and in 4th gear to the Sachs curve, which we take in 2nd gear at 90 kilometers per hour, and then we shift up again to 3rd gear. We manage everything in 3rd gear, the complete stadium. And it's a very difficult part of the circuit because we drive a very low downforce car at this Hockenheim track, which is very difficult to manage this short turns in the stadium. Then we pass the start and finish line in 4th gear, and that's all what I can tell you about this Hockenheim track. I hope you enjoyed it and see you in the race.
He's a bit good. I'll be looking out for my job after this. Well, the story of qualifying, you're looking at it. It was damp. Damper than Silverstone, that's for sure. Silverstone would have, I don't know, I don't think the Grand Prix would ever have happened to Silverstone if there'd been quite this much standing water. The problem at Hockenheim was not just confined to the public areas either. As you can see, the pit lane was quite literally underwater, and it's no exaggeration to say that the place was absolutely unusable for many hours. Indeed, the access in and out of the paddock was impossible because the under-track tunnel was flooded to a depth of over 6 feet. As you can see, the fire engines were drafted in to pump water away from the track and up into the spectator grandstands, which unsurprisingly were empty, but it just took forever to dry the track out. Well, Nicolas Minassian, the Frenchman, was the first man to set quick times when they eventually got underway. Now, the 2 qualifying sessions were both cancelled, and eventually at 7:15 in the evening, they started what was expected to be a 3/4 of an hour single session to set times for the grid before the curfew on the track at 7:30. Well, Minassian had already slipped to second in the order before his car packed up. Seems as though a faulty fuel pump may have left him stranded out on the circuit, and with still some 20 minutes to go, he was really in trouble. Bad luck, he says, because we had a good chance of getting to pole. We were on pole when it happened, but that's racing. Bad news for him. Bad news too for Bruno Junqueira, because in the closing stages, although he had been reasonably quick earlier on, he dropped down the order, and he was one of the first drivers to be caught out by the return of rain. Sébastien Bourdais, the very first man to find out it was raining at the first corner, as he went off at unabated speed from the 170 km/h braking area, and you see the marshal there looking round as he ran to Bourdais. Bruno Junqueira came in to join him at high speed. While neither driver was injured, although I imagine they will both need a bit of physio on their necks, such was the speed of the shunt. I think the marshal, though, was the man who was lucky to get away with it.
The car was okay. When I was on the track, I was third, sixth, I was top 6. I went to the pit to do a refuel, and when I came out, I did 1 lap, and when I start really running lap on the first corner, I was behind Bourdais, like 8 cars behind him. He spun the first corner, and when I brake, my car just completely spun because it starts to rain the first corner, and when I touch the brake, the car's just gone, you know. It's a shame, and because the track is very, very dangerous, because it's dry here, wet in the other parts, and this time the rain just came and I couldn't avoid an unfortunate crash, but it's okay.
Well, fortunately, he is okay. And a number of drivers, a number of front runners caught in the pits about 1/4 an hour before the end, going in to refuel, which is something that they don't normally do in qualifying, and to put fresher tyres on. But the 2 who were still out pounding around right at the end when the rain reappeared and curtailed the session with red flags for Junqueira and Bourdais' crash were these 2. It's an all-McLaren front row because Tomas Enge, the Czech, and Thomas Scheckter, his new teammate in his 2nd ever Formula 3000 race, will start from the front of the grid. It's the first pole for the McLaren Junior team this year, the first in his career for Enge, and it, well, perhaps took a little bit of a lottery in qualifying to mark the return to the front of the McLaren team, but it's hard to say that they didn't deserve it. They have worked tirelessly this season to try and get themselves back on course, and certainly the grins in the McLaren team with Ron Dennis coming down to join them and congratulate them were very obvious, the signs of relief.
I'm really happy for it, for the team, and thanks for everybody here. I was trying to, to push as much as possible. We knew that the rain is gonna start just 10 minutes to the end of the session. So we just put the fuel into the car, good balance, good setup, and I didn't make any mistake. And we are P1, P2, we are really very happy. Finally, hopefully the result will come at this moment.
Well, it was worse for me because only today is 1 session. Normally it's 2 sessions, but because of the consistent rain, I haven't been able to have 2 sessions. So it was very little time for me in the car, and for me to be on second, I'm happy.
So for tomorrow?
Well, I don't know if it's dry. I have to learn a little bit, but I'd like to win. When I'm on second, I'd like to win.
Big smiles too from Jody Scheckter there on the right, and Ron Dennis, the team boss and the father of the outside front row man, respectively. And also you saw congratulations there being added by Nick Heidfeld, who of course is a Prost driver but was sitting with the McLaren team watching his team from last year, the McLaren Junior team, doing their stuff in qualifying. Mark Webber, third on the grid, could have been on pole, was at one stage, already a winner at Silverstone in the rain, of course.
It's difficult. I can't control what Bruno and Nicolas do, so whatever happens to them tomorrow, it's out of my hands. I'm going to do the best I can. I want to try and score maximum points, but you never know. Second still could be a good drive or whatever, so I'll concentrate on my job, and hopefully they don't score points, but it's still a long way behind them.
He is indeed still a long way behind them. Fourth position on the grid, despite being the first man to be caught out by the return of the rain. Sébastien Bourdais, another good qualifying from the bespectacled youngster. Physically okay, as I said, after that crash, but like everybody else, I'm sure now casting his eyes to the heavens and wondering what the weather will bring. So strategy says, well, we'll have to see. It's going to be tough because it will really depend what the weather does. He said making a forecast for this one is just impossible. Well, the session was stopped, as I said, 10 minutes early, and a lot of drivers were caught in the pits looking for fuel and new tyres. As a result of good weather forecasting by the McLaren Formula 1 guys, Enge and Scheckter on the track when it counted, when it was driest, and they start on the front row of the grid. Webber with Bourdais alongside him, Van Hooijdonk and Alonso again qualifying well. Andrea Piccini in with a good chance of gaining a vital point for Kid Jensen Racing for their survival in the championship in 7th. And there is the top 10 with Dino Morelli in 10th spot, a good run from him. Behind them, though, Junqueira and Minassian in 12th and 13th place, the joint championship leaders. And we know just how tough it will be, even in dry conditions, for them to fight their way up to gain a point. If it does rain, well, if it rains from the start, they've got almost no chance. If it rains mid-race, then all bets are off and anything could happen. Further down the order, Kevin McGarity also qualified in 19th, and Justin Wilson also qualified down in 22nd, and I imagine he one of those who was caught in the pits when it rained. Darren Manning crashed early in the second, but fortunately for him, Albers, Leinders and Nicolas had all crashed before him, and there is no Saelens this weekend. So Darren Manning, despite being out of the session for almost all of its running, will start the grid. Join us in a moment as we go back live to Hockenhien. Welcome back live to Hockenhien for round 8 of the FIA Formula 3000 Championship. There is the Mannheim motorway, and right alongside it, the Motordrome Hockenheim. Now this circuit set, as you can see, deep in the forests. Actually, it's not that deep in the forest. Anybody who's ever been there knows that you have to drive through an awful lot of private housing estates just to get to the main entrance. If you've been to Silverstone or a lot of other Grand Prix tracks, they are in the middle of nowhere. This is right in the town of Hockenheim. Well, here we are on the grid, the two Thomases on the front row. Thomas Enge, the Czech, on pole position, and Thomas Scheckter in his second ever Formula 3000 race alongside him. I'm joined again, I'm glad to say, by Gareth Rees in the commentary position here. And Gareth, a very, very timely return to the front from McLaren, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been some time since they've been right at the front like that. But as we were discussing before the race, that this circuit, it's not perhaps the best place to be, because it's such an enormous run down from the first corner to the second corner, that those in front make the hole in the air, and those behind take advantage and slipstream past. So, of all the places they want to be on the front row, this is probably not the place.
Well, a great job also by Thomas Scheckter, not a virgin at this circuit as he was at the A1 ring, where he had never raced. He raced in the Formula Opel Euro Series last year, and this is certainly one of the tracks on which he will have raced already. And it's a double race weekend, so he'll have had plenty of miles here. Of course, the difference between a 2-litre Vauxhall-powered single-seater and a 3-litre V8 Formula 3000 car, quite prodigious, but at least he knows which way the track goes. So that at least gives him something to start with here.
Yeah, it's an impressive performance. I mean, obviously, there is an element of luck involved, because when it's a wet qualifying, it always sort of brings an element of lottery in. But even so, it's for his second F3000 race and not a lot of testing, to get on the front row is pretty impressive.
Interesting to hear Thomas Enge saying in the interview as well in our pre-race show that they had been told by the McLaren team when the rain was due to return, and as a result they brimmed the tanks to make sure that they spent as much time on track as possible. And clearly, if nothing else, those little bits of information drifting down from the Formula 1 team really helped pay off that link to the team for them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously that was the main factor in getting in the front row, but the drivers had to do the job as well, so a good team effort.
Excellent job for Junqueira and for Minassian, though. A very disappointing time to be ready to go for the final 10 minutes, only to have the rain reappear. Darren Manning, as we said, really skin of his teeth job. He's 2:17, pole is at 2:12, so 5 seconds off the pace, but he went off very early on in the wet session and was lucky that there was just one car missing from the entry here, otherwise he would have been bumped out without a doubt. Mark Webber starts in 3rd place, and if this was you, even though it's only his first championship season, with Thomas Enge and the rookie Thomas Scheckter ahead of him, he's got to fancy his chances of being in the lead by the time they come around to the stadium section.
Definitely, yeah, like we discussed. I mean, it's such a long run. I mean, the cars reach almost 190 miles per hour, and it's a very, very long run down to the first chicane. And Mark is in a great position to take advantage of the hole in the air that McLarens are going to make. At the same time, he has to be careful because he wants to make sure he consolidates his 3rd position in the championship. I personally don't think he's got a great chance of winning the championship because he's so far behind, and I'm sure he thinks that from what he was saying beforehand in the preview there. But I think he would certainly like to finish 3rd in the title race, and if he can just get a good result today, not risk throwing it away.
Well, you can see all the cars here on wet tyres. The ruling is that if the FIA tell you it is a wet race at the start, then you're allowed to put wet tyres on. If they don't say it's a wet race, you're not allowed to put wet tyres on. They've obviously decided that since it rained at the end of the Formula 1 session and the track is clearly still pretty damp almost everywhere, that wet tyres are the thing to have, and none of the teams are arguing with that logic either. There's Andrea Piccini, a lot running on his shoulders this weekend. The Italian also raced here in 2 years of the Formula Opel European Union Series, so he knows the circuit well. But Kid Jensen Racing, one of just 2 teams now that hasn't scored any points, and they really do need some points. There are 15 teams in this year's championship. Only 12 top teams are guaranteed a place in next year's series, and the others, well, they know that precedence will be given not only to whoever wins the Italian Formula 3000 National Series, but also to newcomer teams. So anybody who wants a nice peaceful Christmas, as the team said yesterday, needs to have plenty of points on the board by the end of the year. And Kid Jensen Racing, with Andrea Piccini well up the grid there in 7th position, I'm sure hoping that this weekend will at least bring them something. Well, it looks like it's going to start dry. Bit of a dry line we can see appearing there. It was dry enough in the Formula 1 session an hour ago for drivers to improve and get onto the grid. But in the trees, Gareth, on these long straights, effectively 3 straights, up to the Jim Clark curve, up to the Os curve, and then all the way down through the Ayrton Senna curve to the stadium. There's a lot of full throttle, wide open motoring where the spray will be hanging in the air, and it's going to be pretty scary. That's
the problem. I mean, the Os curve, which is the furthest corner away from where we're looking at now, the start and finish straight, is actually 2 miles away. And as you can appreciate, it could still be raining up there, we don't know. And like you said, the trees, from the time they leave the stadium to the time they come back in again, the trees hang over the track, and the track just can't clear of rain and damp. So whilst it looks dry on the pit straight there, actually, as you can see here, it's still pretty wet around the back of the circuit. So I think nobody will risk starting on the slicks, especially those at the front. I think everybody will be on wets.
The question, of course, is how the teams will manage it if it stays dry, if it doesn't rain anymore, and the track at some stage will be too dry for even fresh wet weather tyres, but the tyres that they've had on will start to give up grip, and we're going to, I'm sure, see somebody with nothing to lose, and we might even see a Junqueira or a Minassian, if they're still outside maybe a top 10 position, take an early gamble on slicks, and everybody then obviously watches their times to see whether it was the right time to change or not. I'm sure front runners will be very conservative, though.
Yeah, it'll, again, the team factor comes into play again, because I think 1 or 2 of the teams really work hard on practicing pit stops. And those that do will obviously benefit in a situation like this. And for us and the viewers, it's great because it makes it more exciting. So should be in for a good afternoon.
Well, we had a slightly garbled report just as we were on our advert break that something had happened to Sébastien Bourdais as he was driving around from the pits to the grid. Now, he's supposed to be starting alongside Mark Webber in 4th place. And that is Jeffrey Van Hooydonk following Mark Webber through. Now, it seems, and I haven't been able to get this confirmed from the track at the moment, it seems that Sébastien Bourdais went off either gently or heavily. It doesn't, that has not become clear, during his run out from the pits to the dummy grid. Now, obviously, that means that the track is certainly nothing like dry, and it does mean that the man who should start in 4th place on the grid may not be able to take that position up. He wasn't on the dummy grid, so it's confirmed now that he will not start the race from the grid, and that means that if there's any chance at all of him starting, if the car was able to get back to the pits, he may start from the pit lane, but we may be already in the position where one of the top half dozen drivers has disappeared, and that is better news again for Junqueira and Minassian, because that's one less position they have to worry about before they can get up front. Well, look at it here. There's some fairly light grey bits around the stadium section, and although from the aerial shot, Gareth, it always looks as though the track is, you know, pretty much running in the clear. When you look on the onboard cameras, and you as a driver, you are really running through a tunnel of green there, aren't you?
Yeah, and like we discussed, it does make the water hang in the air, so it's very, very difficult. So I think the only way you're going to tell the right point to put slicks on is when one of the back markers comes in, put slicks on, check his lap times as compared to what he was doing, and then take it from there.
But I think that's going to be several laps away from us. So the cars coming round behind the safety car, ready to take their positions for the start of the 8th race in the FIA Formula 3000 Championship. Now, because the track is so wet and the cars do not have a morning warm-up, they're being given a couple of laps behind the safety car to get themselves accustomed to the conditions. At least I assume that's what's happening. I don't think that this is a start behind the safety car. It doesn't look like it. We haven't seen any sign of that happening. But Gareth, when we were just watching the cars coming towards us there, a number of the cars, and the McLaren here of Enge and Scheckter, have got upper elements to their wings. I noticed a few of them running in traditional old Nürburgring style with very low downforce wings, with all the side plates there, but without a top element, and going for a really minimum grip setup. Is that in the gambling chance that it will dry out and that grip will become less of a premium, do you think?
Yeah, I think it probably is. I think most teams are going to gamble that it will dry at some point during the race, and they'll be in for slicks and therefore a dry setup. So I think they'll start with a reasonably close to dry setup, if not fully dry setup, and that means running your wings as you normally would in the dry. And different teams have different beliefs. I know when I was racing there in '98, we had a very small top plane. McLaren looks quite a lot of downforce to me there. Compared to some of the other cars out there. Both the front two cars have got quite a lot of wing on. But we used to run just a very small top plane, very thin top plane, and we found that was the best balance between straight line speed and good grip through the stadium. Other teams believe in taking the top plane off altogether, and as you can see the car coming through the picture there now. Yeah,
the Dams car of Montagny very clearly.
Yeah, he hasn't got a top plane on. We tried that, we didn't think it worked, but obviously he's happy with it. So it's just what you're happy with and what you feel is right.
Couple of other solutions. I noticed Fernando, Alonso, and here you can see the number 19 car, Dino Morelli. They've gone for three planes, but much more widely spaced. As you say, the McLarens have seemed to have a bit more wing cranked up here. Now, obviously, it's very hard to see, you know, the difference between 10 degrees and 14 degrees, or you know, 2 clicks up or 4 clicks up on the wing from the TV monitor, but it's very easy to see who has gone for an ultra-low downforce setup. And again, we can see a couple of cars here with just 2 elements to the wing as opposed to 3 or 1. So there really is a lot of difference between the team decisions.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen already how in qualifying, having access to McLaren's weather forecasting system, which is clearly fairly sophisticated, has helped the McLaren team in qualifying. And it may be so that they have got a much better idea of what's going on in terms of what's coming in the race as well.
Yeah, it's that, and also I think the fact that when you are at the front like that, you can't afford to take gambles. You have to be conservative, and if you notice, all of the top 8 or 9 are running the same setup except for car 21, Montagny.
Yep.
He's the first car in the pack to take the gamble and go with a low downforce setup, as has his teammate Colby, who's further back.
Yeah.
But they can afford to. You're in midfield there.
Nothing to lose and everything to gain. It looks as though we are going to get a rolling start. So that first lap wasn't a reconnaissance lap. That was a first lap behind the safety car. And instead of forming up for a standing start, we're going for a rolling start now. I'm not sure that the teams were ready for that particularly. And I'm certain that Mark Webber wasn't, because instead of going from a standing start forwards, he has now dropped a position. Fernando Alonso slides there. Montagny tries to pick up a place from Enrique Bernoldi. Well, I do apologise for the confusion. Unfortunately, as you've seen at home, no graphics on the screen to tell us what was going on, and no word from the circuit organisers either. But one thing you can say for certain is that if you're not in the top 5, boy, are you going to be in the spray here. It doesn't look so bad from the aerial shot, but look behind them there as Scheckter in second place now has Webber behind him. So Webber has picked up a place. Somebody straight lines the chicane, and I think that might have been maybe Dino Morelli. But look at the cars sliding around all over the place. It's like a Scalextric's race. Thomas Scheckter second, Mark Webber third, Fernando Alonso in fifth place behind Jeffrey Van Hooydonk. And there, well, Franck Montagny passing Dino Morelli. Yes, yes it is.
Alonso
and Alonso straight lines to chicane. And that's the Os curve. And of course that is the one that everybody straight lines. If you're gonna miss your braking anywhere, it's going to be there. It's such a tight turn in. Justin Wilson battling there with Yves Olivier, trying to get past the Belgian driver. And Webber really has got a very good setup here on this first lap. Now he goes past Thomas Scheckter. Webber up into second place. And it's still Thomas Enge that leads. Franck Montagny and Dino Morelli, and David Saelens wheel to wheel there for minor positions. And Jeffrey Van Hooydonk goes past Fernando Alonso as he picks up another place. Well, a very confusing start to this race. Green flags are showing though, so it is, I mean, this is certainly not a drive round to the grid in any way, shape or form. The race, however, it caught a few drivers out. Possibly they were all told on the grid what was going to happen. Unfortunately, we weren't, I'm afraid. Hey, we're only live television commentators. Why would we need to know? Looking a bit dry here in the stadium section, though, isn't it? Really is quite dry, and that's important because whatever downforce setup they have got, it's never enough for the stadium section, is it?
Well, the problem is, because the stadium section is dry, it also is the hardest part of the circuit on the tyres, and they're on wet tyres. So you'll be probably only 8-9 laps into the race, and the tyres will start to break up. And you've got to preserve them as best you can, because you still need wet tyres out in the woods, so it's difficult.
Couple of very twitchy rear ends you can see there under braking, and there is Nicolas Minassian ahead of Bruno Junqueira and charging, trying to pick up a position, and that is Dino Morelli that he is challenging. Here you can see again Enrique Bernoldi and Franck Montagny. They started 8th and 9th, and they've been 8th and 9th, 9th and 8th, 8th and 9th. It seems as though Montagny can blast past on the straights with that low downforce setup, and Bernoldi can come back at him through the tight stuff, and that's exactly as you would expect it. A very good indication there of how the two setups work on the cars. Well, look at this. Thomas Enge knows that he's going to be potentially in trouble, or at least putting his lead in somebody else's hands if he has to come into the pits, as seems likely for tyre change soon. And so he's really running away, and there is Junqueira's championship challenge gone out of the window for this weekend. He hits David Saelens, and there's Dino Morelli as well. Three of them gravel trapping their way back out. Dino Morelli, on the outside there, really the loser. David Saelens drops a couple of places. Bruno Junqueira's got a damaged right front wing missing, so he will be into the pits early on to change that. And the marshals, who are they going to rescue? Well, they were limbering up for something. I thought perhaps they were going out for the bits and bobs.
Junqueira's wing, probably. Yeah,
David Saelens spreading gravel there as he hit the brakes for the Ayrton Senna curve. And Junqueira not even trying to get round that. He is now concentrating on getting back to the pits. He can hear the noise under the front of the car. And, well, he only really just tapped the other car up the gearbox. I'd be surprised if it's done too much damage. Let's have a look again. Here he comes from, a long way back.
Got that a bit wrong, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was, I would say he was locked up there, that he just didn't manage to slow it down at all.
Dino was the innocent bystander there, unfortunately.
Poor old Dino Morelli battling under braking as Nicolas Minassian tried to get Bruno. No, it wasn't. It was David Saelens tried to come past him, and Bruno Junqueira locked up from a long way back and with no braking at all. Well, to their credit, they all managed to get themselves nicely out of the gravel. And there it is again. Oh, did his front wheel? I don't think his front wheel even hit the back of Saelens' car, so he'll probably be lucky to get away without too much damage, Junqueira. Poor old Dino Morelli got himself in 10th place on the grid, and his second drive in his return to Formula 3000, and gets himself elbowed out by an unfortunate manoeuvre there. Well, it looks as though Morelli's car pretty much unscathed, though. Not the same as you could say for the Petrobras Junior car. Here he comes into the pits. And as we've seen before, it's not a quick job to change these nose wings.
No, it's not. He's going to lose a lot of time. It's all gone a bit wrong for poor old Junqueira, isn't it, last couple of races? Yeah,
since they left Monaco, he really hasn't had an awful lot of good fortune. And there you can see, right ahead of him, David Saelens. And he goes back out.
Gone slicks.
Right. Well, then, this is going to be a very telling few laps. I think it'll take a couple or 3 laps before the teams are really able to guarantee that they're getting, oh dear, oh dear. Well, that is one of the Red Bull cars rolling backwards. And I don't know what that is. Ah, okay, it's a Coloni car, so that's Fabrizio Golin, and it's not the Red Bull car. I think that was probably Andre Cotto. That's Fabrizio Golin, the only Coloni car here this weekend. It was car number 9, Andre Cotto, so he disappears again. Cotto started in 16th, and Fabrizio Golin in 15th, so right together from the start, and just a little bit too right together, putting him off into the gravel. So the Italian crunches away.
That's a good decision, actually, by Supernova to put Saelens on slicks. A, because he's got nothing to lose from where he is, because he'd be probably almost a lap down. But also, it's a great gauge for them, for Minassian, for later in the race. They'll be able to tell exactly how good slicks are or aren't.
Absolutely right. Jamie Malo then will benefit from any information that they get back from Bruno Junqueira, because I would think it's quite possible that they might have put Bruno Junqueira on slicks as well.
I would say so, yeah, I would say so.
Again,
just with the instructions to be careful for 3 or 4 laps, and then hopefully it'll dry and you can go for it.
Again, absolutely nothing to lose in his situation. Any chance of points is completely gone anyway, so the best he can do is gamble on the weather coming to his choice of tyre.
Looks like
and it does look like slicks. Now, as you say, he's going to have to pick and choose the bits of track that he uses. And in comes Justin Wilson. Now, we haven't seen him involved in an incident, and I think that means that he is making a unilateral call to come in for slicks. The question now is, how much can Thomas Enge find water on the track, or Mark Webber, or Thomas Scheckter, our top 3? Ah, raining again. Justin Wilson has made the wrong call. Oh dear. Well, he had nothing to lose because he was so far down after being caught out in qualifying, but it is raining again. Now, that was on the run away from the first corner up to the Jim Clark curve. Here we are at the Os curve, and the cameras don't show any rain here, but it is raining at the end of the pit straight, or certainly around the corner from the end of the pit straight, which means it will get wetter, which means obviously that those that have changed to slicks have gone from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, that is the problem, because it's almost a 4.5 mile circuit. 2 miles away it might be clear as a bell, but soaking wet in another place, so it's very difficult to know what to do.
And unlike Silverstone, where you've got a wide open expanse of circuit, or Magny-Cours, and you can see the weather in the distance, here it's hidden by the trees. You can't even see the exit of the first turn from the pit lane.
Creeps
so
up on you.
You are blind. It does creep up on you. In the same way as Austria suddenly arrives over the mountains. A minute ago you saw the cloud, and now it's raining. Here it comes in over the forests, and you really are in trouble. Well, maybe McLaren's weather forecasting told them that it was going to rain pretty much at the start of the race, and if it did, then it wasn't far wrong. So those that have changed to slicks, maybe we will see them changing back. Helicam picture, picking up spots of water here from the air, which isn't unusual if he's flying up near the cloud. It still looks pretty dry there, so obviously we're starting to see the beginnings of drizzle. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that we had very few graphics in qualifying. We're seeing none at all so far this race. This is not something that Eurosport provide, by the way, as Victor Maslov, no, Darren Manning spins in front of Andreas Schelt. Maslov comes through. Darren Manning there in a battle between the 2 Fortec cars, and spinning out there. So I wonder if that's indicative of either just pushing a little hard, or the fact, no, umbrellas are up on the pit straight as well. So I think it is probably raining pretty much everywhere. And it's
really
heavy rain now as well at Hockenhien, as the weather continues to plague this weekend. Replay here of Darren Manning. Well, you judge that. Did he lose it, or did he get tagged by Andreas Schelt as a result of his spinning, or because he...
Schelt, yeah, it's...
Schelt hit him, okay.
Schelt hit him, yeah.
So there we go, Darren Manning edged out, and if it's not raining there yet, then it probably will be soon, because the rain has returned to Hockenheim, and it's getting wetter. So here we are after 6 laps. Thomas Enge still leading from Mark Webber. For the first time, we're starting to get a rundown in the order of the race, and you can see the top half dozen starting to spread out a little bit. Nicolas Minassian there. Oh, you could see the wheels locking up there everywhere, Gareth. It doesn't look like it's heavy rain, but it's obviously very slippery.
Well, the difficulty is, because they're running so little downforce comparatively. Somebody having a moment there.
Well, there you go. Oh dear. That's the number 20 car, oh, 19 car, no, it's Dino Morelli again in trouble. Yeah, the point you were about to make, I think, about the life of the wet weather tyres when it was dry earlier.
Yeah, the problem is because everything's so little downforce compared to what they'd normally run in a wet circuit, it means that when you're braking, there's no grip, or comparatively no grip, for the tyres. So it's very easy to lock a tyre up and slide off.
And there you can see the result of exactly that.
Yeah.
Justin Wilson and Fernando Alonso, who were battling with each other. Well, no, they weren't actually. Wilson was on slicks, wasn't he? And he'd been into the pit, so Alonso must have caught him and maybe been caught by a spinning Justin Wilson
possibly,
as he tried to get by him. So Wilson out anyway, and Alonso too as well, and that's a disappointment for him.
Bucket it down there.
Absolutely dreadful conditions. And this is where bravery goes out the window, I think. Jody Scheckter, yeah, very mixed feelings as a father, wanting his son to do well, and also thinking, you know, come on, he's running almost blind in Webber's slipstream there. And this is really where you need a good map of the underground to get you around, because looking out the front of the car doesn't do much in terms of seeing where you're going.
I mean, you hear drivers say that you see nothing, and you think that can't quite be true, but you do see nothing. You can see nothing in front of you at all. You can gauge where you are from looking out the side of the cockpit and picking up landmarks, but you cannot see a thing in front of you. It's not too bad there, but on the first straight, from the first corner down to the first chicane, it's really bad.
Very poor visibility indeed. It's very much like when you're on the motorway and you're trying to overtake two trucks side by side in the rain, and suddenly you go into a wall of water and all your wipers are doing is pushing the water around and you still can't see anything. Well, here we see, this is a replay of Dino Morelli's spin as Andreas Schelt goes off ahead of Dino and Darren Manning. So not a replay of Dino Morelli's spin, but a replay of Andreas Schelt going off. And it is definitely raining pretty hard there as well. So anybody who...
just kissed the wall.
Well, he's not having all bad luck, is he? But look, it's still dry here. It hasn't rained at all. This is the end of the main straight, coming into the or final straight, coming into the Sudkurve at the end of the lap into the stadium section. But they are throwing the safety car out. Even though the safety car's got the wipers on intermittent, it is hurling it down on the run up to the Jim Clark curve. And yeah, I'm not surprised actually. We've seen half a dozen cars go off and a couple go out of the race in the last couple of laps, so probably a very good choice. And really you're playing you know, playing safe here as the race organisers, because yeah, it could just go. On the other hand, in 2 laps you could have lost half the field, so you do have to play safe, because it is, after all, you know, although these cars are very robust, it is people's lives you're playing with, and understandably, drivers are not going to put their hand up and say, right, it's a bit too wet for me, I'm coming into the pits. No,
I mean, like I said, you're arriving at the Jim Clark chicane at 185 miles an hour in the soaking rain with not much downforce on, wheel to wheel with somebody else, and it's a good idea to bring the pace car out for a couple of laps just to sort of wait until the rain eases off a bit.
Well, Mark Webber in 2nd place, just counting them through there. Nicolas Minassian in 7th position, so just 1 away from the points at the moment, and that's not bad from 12th position on the grid. Well, while the safety car's out, we'll take this chance to allow the field to bunch up and to get a few commercials out of the way. We'll be back with you in just a moment. Eurosport back live at Hockenhien, the safety car out in round 8 of the FIA Formula 3000 International Championship. And why, you might ask? It all looks pretty dry there. Well, as we see the replays of earlier incidents, yeah, it is pretty dry here in the stadium section. It hasn't started raining here very much. Umbrellas are up, a bit of drizzle maybe, but Gareth Rees out at the Jim Clark curve, the first chicane, and on the run up from the first corner to the first chicane, it's absolutely stair rods. It's very wet indeed. And I don't think you'd argue with that decision to send out the safety car?
No. Oh, well, unless I was in Enge's place where I was miles ahead and in clear vision. But no, for everybody else, it makes sense for the pace car to come out and just sort of slow it all down for a bit. But like there, look, it looks no reason for it, does it at all? It's really just the one place, which is from the exit of the first corner down to really just after the Jim Clark curve, where it really is very wet and really too wet to carry on racing.
Well, there we see the order behind the leaders. Everybody nose to tail. As you can see, they can see their way around here, but as you say, as soon as they get out onto that wet straight, everybody fans out onto the side of the circuit looking for some visibility at all. Tomas Enge then, the pole position man, still leading this race. And, well, he had built up a fairly commanding lead, but it was always going to be the case that the weather would decide this race and the way that it was run, and so it has proved. We said before the start that McLaren had certainly not bothered with a low downforce setup for their cars, and they did put their good timing of their qualifying runs down to the good forecasting from their Formula One partners, McLaren team. And it looks as though the weather forecast they were given by the F1 radar guys for the race has proved to be right. It is going to be a medium to high downforce race. Now, what are we seeing here? The
start of the race,
Yeah, I think we probably are. This is when they went away from the safety car the first time. What a shame we didn't see that shot, because it would have shown us green lights as opposed to the orange lights when they left the grid. Anyway, Mark Webber caught unawares by Jeffrey Van Hooydonk. I don't know how Van Hooydonk managed to outbrake him there, because it was pretty damp on that bit and Webber was on the dry. I think he just basically had the run into the corner. A little bit further back, Andrea Piccini was doing his level best to hold on to that position. Anyway, we will see the safety car go round for at least another lap. The lights are still on. So at the moment, let's run down the order. Well, there is Franck Montagny. He's in 5th position at the moment. Andrea Piccini is in 6th place. Thomas Enge still leads from Mark Webber. Thomas Scheckter in 3rd position. And I can't remember who is behind them, but it's pretty hard to see in the spray. This is the part of the track where it's wettest, as you can see. And this, I think, will be Bruno Junqueira coming back in off his slicks onto wet tyres. Either that or to say, right, I've had enough. Some looking around at the rear of the car. Now, it didn't seem as though that particular part of the car got banged at all in his incident earlier on with Dino Morelli and David Saelens.
Gearbox problem? Or?
Possibly, yeah. They're looking inside the cockpit as well. And having a good look around with a torch. Well, I mean, obviously this is the time to be doing it when the safety car is out and he's not losing any more positions. He is stone last. I think the very best that Bruno Junqueira can really expect from this weekend at the moment, though, is a point for fastest lap. It's going to have to be an ultimately bizarre turn of fortunes to see him ending up at the front of the field. Well, that's that.
Well, I suspect a gearbox problem, because they're looking at the back of the car where the gearbox is and looking at the gear selector as well, down by the driver's right hand, so
Well,
indicates a gearbox
certainly
problem.
Seems so. Replay there of him locking up his slick tyre, and that's probably not a surprise given how little traction there is out on the circuit at the moment. That's a fairly substantial flat spot, then, isn't that? It's a long lock-up. Watch when it turns round, yeah, that...
it's one dead tyre, I think.
That will have shaken his fillings loose if he had to run the rest of the race on that one. Well. Monaco, undoubtedly the high spot of his career so far, or his season so far, and it's been a long, slippery run down since then, hasn't it? Not much you can say about that. I think his facial expression says everything. Well, hard to see how, even though he did clatter into the car there, hard to see really how that can have caused a problem, unless maybe, possibly, you know, missing a gear and locking, or you know, the gears grabbing and locking up the rear end actually caused that in the first place.
Yeah, they're not necessarily connected. It might just be a separate problem altogether.
Anyway, Bruno Junqueira out, and Nicolas Minassian 1 point away from having some points. And
I guess there's a fuel leak, is it? Well, look at it.
That is...
That's Dino Morelli.
Dino Morelli. Yes, it does look like a fuel leak. That is normally what you do to stop the burning. No, so you think, well, sitting in petrol, that can't do you much good if the car's in a crash. But no, it really burns, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
It really burns. That takes the skin off you, no doubt about it. Yeah, so Dino Morelli out of the race as well. And that may well possibly be as a result of his tangle and rattle across the gravel traps. Whatever, the safety car is out as the field becomes more and more depleted. Looks like you could pick up a point here now just by rate of attrition if you keep your nose clean. Justin Wilson not looking particularly pleased, and I'm not surprised at that. Disappointed with his bad luck in qualifying. Little wry smile, and that's about all he can manage. He was one of the first to go for slicks, and I thought that looked like quite a good gamble. Yeah, somebody going into a marker, and that was David Saelens trying to get out of the way of Nicolas Minassian, I think, just running onto the grass as he misjudged things and hit the braking marker. So it's one of those big polystyrene boards being shattered there. But Justin Wilson, I thought it was quite a good gamble when he went onto slicks, because it was drying, and clearly those who were in the midfield really had nothing to lose. he was just, you know, it's as with the gamble, it was the luck of the dice. As soon as he went on the slicks, and the others did as well, the weather changed and it was back onto wets. Let's have a look and see which one of the Supernova cars it was. Boff, on he comes. Yeah, it was Saelens.
Yeah.
It was Saelens. And, you know, we said that as soon as they got onto the wet straight, they fan out up by the white line to try and see where they're going. Obviously, he fanned a little bit too far, and as his vision cleared, he went, oh, the track's green.
It's actually more easily done than you might think, actually, to do that.
Well, more bizarre things have happened in the rain than that. Now, it looks as though it's stopped raining out on the Os curve, out on the Jim Clark curve, rather, on the run out through the front straight. We haven't seen it for a lap or two. But given the fact that behind the safety car, David Saelens managed to find himself on the grass, perhaps it's still not time to switch the lights off on the safety car.
The trouble is, sometimes when you're under the safety car, your concentration does lapse, and you make mistakes you wouldn't perhaps make under full racing conditions.
Yeah. Well, this is conditions as it was a few laps ago. But even then, as they turned out of the Nord curve of the first corner and started on the run up towards the Jim Clark chicane, you could see, even at the speed they're doing behind the safety car, which can't be much more than 60 miles an hour, maybe 70 miles an hour, they're still in a wall of water. So I think the safety car will stay out for quite some while. Now, excuse me while we get these noted down. Talk amongst yourselves. So Enrique Bernoldi, the final points scorer. So something happened there in the last bit of running where he got past Piccini into 6th position, which we didn't see. Down in the minor placings, you can see the rest of the runners. Most of those below the top dozen have been off the track or into the pits for some reason or other. Nice arty shot.
Artistic, yeah.
Yeah, that's, well, not much else for the pits cameramen to do at the moment. In fact, not much else for any of the cameramen to do. Scheckter looking quite relaxed there, I thought, on the pit wall.
Outwardly. I'm sure he's not inwardly.
He was, we were watching him in qualifying, actually, when his Tomas was out on the track, and Jody looking very relaxed, but his right foot tapping away furiously under the stool.
Giving the game away.
Yeah, absolutely. He's certainly running on nerves and espresso, I would think, this weekend. So confirmation coming through from the Petrobras team that it was a broken gearbox, which put Bruno Junqueira out. And, well, all that luck that he seemed to have at the Nürburgring on the 3rd race of the championship and his run of good results have all ended. Lights are out on the safety car. We should be growing green next time round. So the field streams into the stadium section. It's looking, well, not as rammed to the rafters as it would be for a Formula One race, but still, that's a pretty respectable crowd, you have to say. Incidentally, talking about the crowd, reading in the German media overnight that a number of spectators were nearly hit by a lightning strike in the campsite last night in the thunderstorm, so we wish them all the very best. Meanwhile, we're about to go back racing, and Thomas Enge leads them across the line. Enge from Webber, Scheckter in 3rd, Van Hooijdonk in 4th, Montagny 5th, Bernoldi 6th position. Then Piccini goes in, then championship leader Minassian with a chance to stand alone on top of the championship table here. There is Jamie Malo all over the curbs and just dancing with disaster there on the edge of the gravel trap. It's still very, very wet indeed on this run from the Nord curve up to the Jim Clark chicane. And I wouldn't want to be out there for all the tea in China. And you can see still cars all over the track as they try to find a bit of air to look through and then find the racing line. 3 abreast. Ooh, dear. Well, the Astra Mega car comes back on, but in all sorts of trouble.
It looks to me like he's lost his back wing, actually.
Does it? Well, he may... And that may be very interesting indeed. No wonder he couldn't slow down in that case. So Webber in 2nd place. Oh, as Montagny takes Van Hooijdonk out of the equation. Montagny will need to go into the pits for a new nose wing.
Helps
so
Minassian.
He's out. That helps Minassian, who moves up to 7th. And in fact, I'm sure they will pass Van Hooijdonk as well as he spins the wheels furiously, trying to get it going again. Now he's got some drive, yeah. So Minassian is now in 6th, I think. because he was in 8th place before. So with those two going out, Piccini was in 7th, Minassian was right behind him. We'll see as they come into the drying, we get a chance to look at what's happening. Enge again starting to ease away from Webber, but not by as much this time as he did on the first lap. Webber with his head right together around this restart. Scheckter in 3rd. Very damaged car of... no, it wasn't. It was the Dams driver in 4th place, and that was Franck Montagny. It was, yeah, so still damaged, but Montagny here, without his nose, still running in 4th. Did he make it round? He very nearly made it round the corner. Jeffrey Van Hooydonk, the one who really suffered there. Well, it would be nice to see them go across the line so we could tell you what the order is, but unfortunately we'll have another third look at that one. Anyway, I think we're going to scrub Van Hooydonk and Montagny, because I'm sure he will come into the pits, which leaves us with Bernoldi and then Piccini in 4th and 5th places, and Minassian in 6th position. So here they come then, off the front straight onto the long run up to the Jim Clark curve. And there with Minassian, and behind him is his teammate, David Saelens. Now Saelens is a lap down, so it's not Saelens who's next up. Scheckter in 3rd there. Montagny is still going. He must know he's lost his nose. He must know. Now, why has he not come into the pits? I mean, that just seems foolhardy in these conditions. I know he's got a very low downforce setup anyway, but it wasn't that low downforce. Montagny still in 4th, but he must start to get penalised now for not going through the chicanes, because that's very much a factor here at Hockenhien. Top 3 are real positions. Montagny in 4th place, and running faster than the 5th place man. Not surprising, as he's not going all the way around the track. 5th place is Bernoldi at the moment still. 6th place is Piccini, so Minassian in 7th, but really it's, he's either going to have to go in soon or they're going to call him in, I'm sure. That is just plain silly.
I would have thought the team would be on the radio by now to call him in.
Enge working very hard in the lead. You saw him just momentarily locking up the front wheels. And Montagny, now he's not just going to be a danger to himself, he is going to be a danger to Bernoldi and Piccini behind him now in this weather, because he is going to be slow into and out of the corners, and behind, 2 red and white cars tangle. Well, we know that the 2 Fortec drivers were there together with Kevin McGarity, and 2 of the 3 of them still, all 3 of them still running. My goodness, well, that was one of the oh dear, that was one of the Arden cars there, Arden Team Russia, with the Russian Imperial Eagle there on the front. Now, it would be interesting to try and work out who that was, but I can't. Top 3. Oh dear, this is starting to become a little bit of a farce, I'm afraid. We will try and get our heads around it. It'd be interesting for the organisers to give us some kind of update on the positions. Montagny comes in, so that at least takes him out of the equation. Now Bernoldi will be in 4th place, then Piccini in 5th, and Minassian in with a point. The Dams team are ready for the Frenchman, and he manages to stop on the marks. Now what are they going to do? They're going to go for slicks? No, they're going to lift it up onto blocks so that they can change the nose, because the bolts are so low down to the ground. Okay, that's fair enough. Red car come in behind him. I think that will have been the Arden team's driver. Whether that was Darren Manning or Victor Maslov, time will tell, but probably not the producer. Top 3 remain unchanged. 4th place, Enrique Bernoldi, you could see him there. Andrea Piccini not close enough to challenge, but I think the drivers are going to sit back now and wait for the track to dry a bit before they do anything in terms of trying to pick up positions. Let's have a look again here at the replay. Well, there you go. It was the Arden driver that made the mistake, and I think that is... Oh no, that's a Nordic car. Now, I thought it was a Fortec car, so that's one of the Nordic drivers. Oh, now I really am confused. I don't know who that was. Either Kevin McGarity, well, it must have been Kevin McGarity, because Justin Wilson's already retired, and he was hit by Darren Manning. Oh, goodness. There aren't too many Brits left in the race, boys. You could at least avoid each other. If you're going to hit people, hit someone else. Kevin McGarity and Darren Manning make contact, and again, Gareth, that just looked like running out of grip under braking,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, we were lucky to get away with that. It could have been much worse. If they got air under the car, it could have flipped the car over.
So Darren Manning, without his rear wing, trying to outbrake Andreas Schelt without much luck. We'll be back live at Hockenhien again in just a moment. Back live at Hockenhien, Thomas Enge, Mark Webber, Thomas Scheckter. The lead trio still unchanged from how they restarted behind the safety car, and they're pulling away from the rest of the field. 5 seconds back to Bernoldi in fourth. He's got Andrea Piccini a second and a half behind him. And this is Kevin McGarity having a new rear wing fitted by the Nordic team. Like the nose wings, these things don't change in a matter of moments. And you can't fit your own quick change mechanisms either. You have to have exactly the car that's built by Lola, or it gets slung out. So running down the top 6 then, Nicolas Minassian should be in 6th place. Lead 3 come through. Top of the picture, there's Bernoldi. There is Piccini behind him. And Minassian in 6th, confirmation of that. Now I have Mark Goossens as being next up, but he's been passed by Colby. Then Melo, Schelt, and then Maurizio has got between Schelt and Haberfeld. Andre Coto and Yves Olivier, these are all still on the same lap. And then the guys who have been in trouble, McGarity and the others who have been off track or into the pits. So we're starting to see really 2 groups in this race, aren't we, Gareth? The lead trio and then all the others who are sort of jumbled up and scrambling around. Outside the top 8 cars, it's pretty much guys who have already had trouble or are, you know, not likely to feature at all.
Well, that's where we should look now for those who will start to pit early for slicks. Although looking at that, I'd say not for a while. But I think that's where it'll come from, is that pack, because they've got nothing to lose. Come in, put slicks on and see how it goes.
At the very least, they might get a point for fastest lap, which I suppose would be something. But, you know, yeah. No, you don't get a point for fastest lap. I'm sorry, I've got my British Formula 3 head on at the moment. Yes, no, that was Thomas Scheckter last weekend at Croft. No, sorry about that. No, so no points at all. So that, I mean, yes, it's worth doing, but certainly not worth doing yet, is it?
Not judging by how wet it is there, where we're looking now, no.
Now this is Andrea Piccini, who is in 5th position. Nicolas Minassian is in 6th place, but that's not him, is it?
Saelens.
That's David Saelens. Minassian, I think, is a long way back and going further back.
Yeah.
Saelens in the same team and in the same car, with, you would assume, that's not Minassian, I'm afraid, Mr. Caption Writer. That is definite. That is definitely David Saelens, unless Minassian, for some reason, is using David Saelens' helmet. But car number 4, it says it's David Saelens, so I'm not going to let my eyes deceive me here. So Saelens is a lap back, and it is a little bit naughty maybe to be getting in amongst the top half dozen, but perhaps not entirely surprising. He's got to do something with his car, I suppose, hasn't he? Darren Manning, bearing all the scars of battle which have been inflicted on him so far in this race. And here is our leader, Thomas Enge. This is now half distance. They've completed 16 laps. They've got 15 to go in this 31 lap distance at the end of this lap. And, well, halfway through, it's been a bizarre race already. I don't think that these wet weather tyres will last 15 laps, though. I think they may have to, though. I don't think it's going to get an awful lot wetter. And even if it gets drier, I can't see the top 3 wanting to change, can you?
No, at the moment, you've just got to put up with it, simple as that. But unfortunately, like I said, the driest part of the circuit is the stadium section, and the stadium section is where the tyre wear is the highest. So those soft, wet tyres are really getting a hard time through that section there.
The real problem with these is that, as you say, they are softer. They've got a much softer compound because tyres run wetter. There's Minassian. Is he crabbing down the straight?
Looks like
he is.
Looks like
He's got a really badly blistered left rear. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's absolutely given up, that tyre. And Minassian must come in.
Yeah, I would say so.
That will never survive 15 laps.
No.
He'll have a monster tyre explosion if he doesn't put it off the road. He's really struggling there. That's why he's gone backwards. And he's been passed by... well, by the Dams car.
Yeah, he's got to come in.
Yeah, it's looking very, very tough indeed. The problem is, as you say, because the water around the track lowers the track temperature, the rubber compound has to be softer. As a result, when it's running on a dry track, the heat build-up is too much for the car, for the tyre, and it starts to, well, the rubber starts to deform and internally in the chemical compound and stops giving the grip it should do. And worse than that, all those nice big square-cut tread blocks, they all start rubbing away.
Start to fly off.
And they become rounded and bits fly off it. But it also means that when you're in the water, they're not big, nice valleys between your bits of rubber. They're the thing starts to be worn down, and it doesn't work on the dry, and it doesn't dispel the water either.
You end up with intermediates, but
yeah,
intermediates that work anywhere.
No, exactly. Get up with slicks that are no good on the dry and wets that are no good on the wet.
Yeah.
So a dreadful situation.
It's strange that Minassian should be suffering, but nobody else obviously is. Whether he's abused his tyres more than anybody else, or...
Well, I don't know.
Everyone had the same, control tyre, so in theory they should all go off pretty much together, in one go, as it were. But that left rear has obviously gone off a long way very quickly. Very definitely, yes, it certainly has. I think Mark Goossens is in trouble as well here, because he was ahead of Jamie Malo and behind and Andreas Schelt, and it looks now as though Schelt is starting to climb all over the back of him, and Jamie Malo has gone long by, and even with that very low downforce on the yellow machine, you can see he's not got a top rear wing as Schelt has. Goossens is really struggling, and again his tyres look really marked up, don't Alonso's front left is very tired as well, yeah.
No, this is the Astra Mega car.
I'm sorry, you're right.
This is Mark Goossens. His front left, as you said, very dark band on it. You can see, and again, Jamie Malo's as well. These tyres are really starting to give up very quickly now, all of them. And we should see a rash of pit stops fairly soon. So, 18 laps into the race, Thomas Enge leads, but this is a very telling shot here, because when you get a close-up of these two drivers, you see big dark bands around their tyres, and that is where the tread blocks are starting to feather off and fall apart, and the tyres are losing bits. They're on wet weather tyres, as they have been since the start of the race. We've had a safety car period because it rained very heavily between the end of the main straight, or the pit straight at least, and the first chicane on Hockenheim's flat-out blasts. And that was very much a good choice. It was still very wet here, as you can see from race leader Thomas Enge's viewpoint, but the drivers who are, maybe it's just a factor of running behind other cars and in the spray, not being able to search out good bits of the track where it's wet. Lots of the drivers are running into tyre problems. We didn't see the move, Gareth, but as they came towards us there, Thomas Scheckter has gone past Mark Webber up into second place, and I wonder if Webber's tyres are starting to give up the ghost. Quite possibly. Difficult to say when they're running at high speed like we're seeing them now, how bad the tyre is. When it's a slower speed in the stadium, you can really see. But yeah, I mean, Mark Webber was running very well earlier on, so I can only imagine that either he's made a mistake or his tyres are going off. Well, in these slippery conditions, either is just as likely, because half the circuit is almost bone dry, which wet weather tyres just can't live with, and the other half of it is wet enough that drivers are still making mistakes. We're seeing people slide all over the curbs. We're seeing Thomas Enge doing it here in the dry. It's bone dry there. Why is the car sliding? Because there's no grip. The car will become very difficult to drive through the stadium section. There's an awful lot of load going through the tyre, and the tyre just cannot cope. There's just no grip, and the surface of the tyre will move, and consequently the car will move, and it just feels like back to Formula 4 days, where the whole thing is just, you're driving your elbows out, it's fun, but it's not particularly good when you're leading a race. So we're saying them sliding around on the wet because the wet weather tyres are shot and they can't deal with what little water there is around, and we're seeing them sliding around on the dry purely because they're on wet weather tyres, and as you say, they slide all over the place. The rubber starts to boil, peel off the canvas, or carcass. It's not canvas anymore. In fact, it's not rubber anymore, but we'll move on by that. It's just a chemical concoction. Although actually these control tyres, the Formula 3000 control tyres, probably are still largely rubber-based. F1 tyres don't actually have anything that came out of a tree in them at all. They are just purely chemicals. Minassian, isn't it? That's Minassian. Well, we saw already he was dropping down the order. We saw his tyres in trouble, and yeah, look, there's grip. Well, actually, they don't look as bad there as they did a couple of laps ago, but yeah. It is. I really think it's a matter of time. I don't think any of these tyres are going to last the rest of the race. Not unless they're very well looked after. 11 laps to go. P2 for Thomas Scheckter. 11 laps. Maybe. I tell you, the longer this goes on, the more I fancy Thomas Enge to win this. Because as we've seen earlier in the year, he doesn't care how much the car slides. He just drives around it. He loves it. And he really could do it. If he doesn't have a tyre, really seriously delaminate or blow up on him through excess heat, and that is a possibility, then he might hang on and win this, and we may yet even get a McLaren 1-2. Andre Cotto here diving around behind Andreas Schelt. looking for some way by. Now, Koto, I wonder if he's had... Did he stop in the pits and have fresh tyres after his little gravel trap experience, or I wonder if he kept going? Whatever, Nicolas Minassian here under pressure from Jamie Malo. There's Mario Haberfeld and Mark Goosen, so the order is really being shuffled up a lot. At the moment we've got, the race leader in the pits. This is Thomas Enge.
For what though?
Well, for slick tyres or fresh wets, whatever it is.
Slicks.
Yeah, it's going to be a gamble. It's going to be a gamble, but obviously, and we've seen this already, McLaren were right about the weather in qualifying. They were right about the weather at the start of the race, and you've got to bet that they know what they think is going to happen to the weather now. It's a very slow left rear change, but if he's right, now look at this. Why this lap? There's 5 cars in this lap, including the leader, and they can't all have seen Enge come in and say, come in, come in, come in.
But don't forget, Saelens was on slicks last time we saw him. His lap times may well be significantly quicker than those on the wets, in which case you have to come in. You lose perhaps 30-40 seconds coming in, but when you come back out, your lap times are probably up to 10 seconds a lap quicker.
Well, they've got 10 laps to regain this ground that they've lost, and it is getting close. Okay, so we can expect Thomas Scheckter leading a Formula 3000 race for the first time ever in his career, in only his 2nd race in the category.
He's got to come in there. He has to come in.
We can expect to see him in, and you can bet that whatever their weather forecast says, if the Arrows team see the first 2 go in, they're going to have to bring Webber in as well, because he may lead, and he may lead for quite some while, but he's going to end up fighting a rear guard action in the closing laps with no tyres to do it on.
It'd be indefensible.
Well, what a gamble, though, for the leaders. And now, you know, guys who are in not top 6 positions, they've got to stay on wets. They've got to stay on wets and hope that they've got some way of staying out of the leader's reach, if maybe there's a tiny sprinkling of rain or something. Look at Minassian's tyres there. You could see it there. It's like somebody's taken a chisel to them to take lumps out of them. They were horrible-looking things.
Be interesting to see, because Saelens is a lap down though, isn't he?
Yes,
he's not on the same lap.
Yeah, so nothing to lose, and he is. And he was the water tester for Minassian, and as soon as the lap times on slick start dropping below those of Minassian on his ruined wets, then the message must come, okay, Nicolas, come in now.
Yeah, I mean, those going on to slicks now will find it difficult through the back section by the Jim Clark chicane, but they will find unbelievable amounts of time through the stadium section where it's just dry.
Absolutely. Even if they double their braking distance from 80 metres to 180 metres into the Jim Clark curve, that'll get them slowed down, and it'll lose them, what, maybe a second a lap compared to the 2 or 3 seconds a lap they'll make out just not spinning the wheels through the stadium complex.
And the speed they can carry through the corners of the stadium, they probably go perhaps twice as quick through the corners.
Plus, not forgetting, it's still dry at the Os curve, and it's still dry at the Ayrton Senna curve, the other main chicane, and those really heavy braking areas from 5th to 2nd and back up. Again, your tyres really help you there. So no surprise at all to see Minassian come in. He really has to keep his championship challenge alive, and look at that. Like to see a close-up of those rear tyres, because they are absolutely wrecked. Well, now it's really going to be very interesting indeed to see a rundown of the race order, because we haven't seen Thomas Scheckter come in. Whether he has or not, we don't know. We haven't seen Mark Webber come in either. Whether he has or not, we don't know, because we've been watching other things. But the TV director really needs to try and pick up the person who is the race leader. And here we have Thomas Scheckter. Well, Scheckter's still on those wet tyres, so we must assume still the race leader.
Unless McLaren are covering all options by having one on slicks, one on wets. And there behind him,
I think, is still Mark Webber. So now what are we seeing here? Somebody stalled at the entrance to the pits as he's come in. I think we're seeing the team running down there. They look like the WRT mechanics. So it was, in fact, the Dams team running down as Franck Montagny came in slowly. Looks as though his car has cried enough. Well, I wonder where the choice lies here, do you think? With Scheckter himself and his engineer, or is David Brown going to say, okay, Thomas, now really come in?
It's a combination. I mean, you as a driver, you're reliant on the team to help you.
Lap 9, P1, 4 seconds in the lead. Tough call. Tough call for Tomas Scheckter now. 9 laps of Hockenhien to go. 9 very long, very high-speed laps that will require an awful lot of his already worn wet weather tyres. His teammate handed over the lead to take on slicks. David Brown, the McLaren team boss, is his race engineer, the engineer of the #1 car, and I'm sure that somewhere in the next lap or two we saw the team ready there. They're ready in case he wants to come in. It makes me think maybe it is Thomas's call here to stay out.
Well, I mean, the team have access to more information than Tomas does, really, so it's up to them to say, no, get in. They can see the lap times that drivers on slick tyres are doing. They know that you really have to be on slicks to be going quick, and they should be saying in, yeah, get in now. As a driver, it's difficult because you can see half the track's wet, half the track's dry. You're concerned that if you put slicks on and they're going to be cold because you can't heat them before you go out. They're going to be cold tyres. You're concerned that on the wet parts of the track it's going to be very difficult, very dangerous. So you're always leaning towards the conservative side, and because you don't know what the other drivers are doing, and you're leading the race, you think, well, I'm better off where I am rather than gambling all this. The team can see that isn't the case, and they should be on the radio saying, get in, and change the tyres.
Well, certainly Scheckter can see what state his tyres are in quite clearly. That no racing driver will be able to miss just how bad they look. Well, let's see. Oh, Thomas Enge, look at that. Desperate to get onto a bit of dry line there to get past Riccardo Maurizio and just biffed him out of the way. But now Enge's had a lap out and a full-speed race lap. They must now know it's time to come in or it's not yet time to come in, because you know, the figures just tell you everything you need to know. Yeah. So the McLaren team are ready. Didn't look ready to be sort of really in positions, but they will be by the time he comes down the pit road. No. Not this time. Well, now, you know, is this, I don't know. We'll only know at the end, won't we? Yeah. Whether +7, he's now 7 seconds ahead of Mark Webber, who's in second place, and Webber's continuing on those wet tyres as well. I mean, we don't have access to a monitor, unfortunately, either, so we can't see the lap times. So we don't know, but certainly Saelens seems to be going well on slicks, doesn't he? Shall I tell you somebody who's not going to change? This guy right here. Andrea Piccini will no longer come into the pits if the heavens open or if suddenly there's an earthquake, because he's in third place, and that is 4 points for Kid Jensen Racing, and he knows how desperately the team need those. There is nothing that will bring him off the track apart from the checkered flag. Now, looking further back, here is Thomas Enge, just about to come into the top half dozen, because Haberfeld is now in 7th place, Bernoldi here in 8th, and Enge in 9th, or is it 6th, 7th and 8th? But whatever, he is clearly quicker than the guys ahead of him. The question is, in 8 laps, can he make up the 20 seconds difference? You think that he probably can? I think he will. I think he will. Looking at the way the track's running at the moment. If you consider there's 20 cars out there all pounding around, creating a dry line. I know it doesn't clear that well because of the trees, but even so, I think he'll... the track will become dry enough for him to make a significant impression. The other big question, of course, is how easy are the other guys going to be to pick off? Sure, he's got better traction, sure, he's got better grip, but don't, you know, an awful lot of this track is done at wide open throttle running, isn't it? And in a straight line, slicks don't help him at all. No. It's into and out of the chicanes, and as you say, especially around the stadium section. If he can catch somebody going into the stadium, he's got him. Dead to rights. No, and the exact same situation happened in my last year in 3098. We had a race exactly like this. And I actually was one of the last to come in, because again I was reliant on information from the team and I didn't get the call. And I came in late, and I was struggling around with I actually led the race like Tomas Scheckter is, on wets that were absolutely shot. And I think Heidfeld it was who came past me on slicks, and just the speed differential was unbelievable, because he was on, you know, good warm slicks. He'd been out for a lap or two on them, and he just shot past me and just went. And then it came home to me, I better get in, because I hadn't had the call, and it was left to me to do the shout. I hope Tomas has had a call from the team or more information than that. Well, interesting to see that 2 cars running first and second, run by the same team, taking completely different choices here. Let's see how this one pans out in just a moment. Back live at Hockenhien, and all the questions that we asked a moment or two ago about whose tyres were the best choice among the McLaren team. Well, it looks as though Thomas Enge, although he was lapping quicker on slick tyres, made, well, maybe not the wrong choice of tyre, but the wrong choice of line, because while we were away on the commercial break, Enge put the car off the road. There are now 6 laps to go for Tomas Scheckter, the race leader. And the man who handed over the lead to his teammates to go in for slicks dropped the car off the road. And Gareth, that is the big danger with slicks on a wettish track.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. You have to be very careful. You're always worried about putting slicks on a wet track because you know the danger. You have to push very hard in order to make up the time you've lost. But at the same time, if you push too hard on a damp track on cold slicks, that happens. And I think that has probably cost him the race.
I think so. I don't think there's any doubt that he's now far too far back to work his way up the order in the half-dozen laps that are remaining. Schechter's got, the last time we saw a couple of laps ago, had over 8 seconds lead on Mark Webber. Webber still hanging in grimly for those 6 points. It's not a win, but it's better than any of the other championship contenders are going to score here. Nicolas Minassian down in 13th position, and really a long way away from a point here of any kind. And we've already seen Bruno Junqueira out of the race with his gearbox failure. There is Mark Webber, the second place man, and you could just see him coming into shot behind Schechter there. A long way back though. Andrea Piccini is his worry. Look how much Piccini has closed in the last couple of laps. Piccini in third place, and Mark there as ever searching out the dry bits of track. He really is very conscientious about that. He did it at Silverstone, seen him do it before in sports cars and in Formula 3, really hunting for wet weather surface as much as possible to try and keep the tyres cool and to keep some grip in them. But it looks as though he is being caught here. So there is Andrea Piccini in third place. That's Franck Montagny. No, it's not. It's Christian Colby. It is Christian Colby in fourth place. Cool. I don't think that's a reflection on his driving style. I think that's just a reiteration to Thomas Schechter to do exactly what Mark Webber is doing, which is to make sure you keep the tyres cool. And it is surprising just how much a bit of water brings down the temperature in a tyre, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where you see the drivers hunting out the wet parts of the track, because it gets incredibly hot. The tyres get incredibly hot in the dry section, so you've really got to cool them down as much as you can on the damp sections.
Well, here is Nicolas Minassian in the midst of traffic. He's got Andre Coteau behind him, who he's just passed, and Andreas Shelterhead, who he has now got next up. You saw Kevin McGarrity. His race of incident and accident continues. He was recovering from a run off the track there, and in a straight line Nicolas Minassian goes past, and he's able to do that because he got a much better acceleration out of the Ayrton Senna chicane. So by the time he gets to the Sud curve at the start of the stadium complex, not only has he got much better speed, but he knows he can carry it into the corner because he's got much better braking and much better grip through the turn as well. And Schelt here with Coteau right behind him. He needs to have been hard at it for lap after lap. I don't think there's any grip left in either of their tyres. And Thomas Schechter spins. Well, he's got a big lead, but boy, that was keeping it on the damp stuff a little too far, I think. Schechter spins, and he's now 4, 5, maybe 5 seconds ahead of Mark Webber as he recovers. But that shows us just how tough these last few laps are going to be for this top three. They're all looking for a place on the podium, and I think probably more than anything, they're all praying that their tyres don't start to rip themselves apart. Oh, just bounced a little bit too much on the curbs. Oh, we've seen that so many times at Hockenhien. This Ost-curve chicane really drops away, and it's got high curbs. And Jody's going, oh, come on, come on, come on, keep cool, calm down. 5 laps to go, 4 after this one.
I think that was what the message was from the team, actually, was rather than the tyres, referring to, cool it down a bit, and unfortunately, it didn't pay heed.
Well, either that or maybe just, you know, that concentration lapse kind of thing, just a fraction. That will certainly have woken him up, though. I don't think we'll see a concentration lapse again from him in this race. He got away with that one very fortunately, and Thomas Schechter with a really excellent chance here to score a victory. Cool tyres, it says now. You didn't get the message right last time. Let's try it again with more words on the board. So Thomas Schechter leads with 4 laps to go from Mark Webber, Andrea Piccini and Christian Colby in 4th place. Well, this is going to be a very important finish for Andrea Piccini. If the little Italian can get himself onto the podium and stay ahead of Christian Colby, he will be very, very happy man. Not just for himself, but particularly for the Kid Jensen Racing Team. I think they've taken to each other very well indeed. And Kid Jensen Racing Team sticking with the drivers that they signed and the drivers that they trusted to do a good job for them, despite the fact the points situation was starting to get very desperate for them indeed. Well, here is Thomas Enge now in 5th position, so despite his spin, he's worked himself back into the points. 3.5 laps of Hockenhien, and he's, well, a full chicane behind the race leader. There's still a chance of a podium place, if not a win.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound many laps, but nobody gets 4 miles per lap, which is the same as, you know, most circuits are sort of 2.5 miles, 3 miles, so it is a long lap, so you never know.
It is a long lap indeed. Thomas Scheckter 21 seconds ahead of Thomas Enge, and 20 miles, so he's got to go a second a mile quicker, which amounts to, what, nearly 4 seconds a lap quicker, and doesn't seem too much of a still end in to do it. I think he might even get Mark Webber before he starts the next lap.
Well, the stadium sections where he really has the advantage.
Well, this is a great tactical battle being played out here. And you could see certainly just from that shot as he battled with Andrea Piccini that slicks are definitely the thing to have now. But it's the time you lose making that change that always is the mitigating factor against changing your tyres. Mark Webber, look at that.
See Mark's car moving.
Couldn't hold a line to save his life.
No.
All over the road and nothing he can do about it. And Thomas Enge just waits for him to get to a corner, watches him wash out wide and takes the inside line. Enge, second. 7 seconds behind Thomas Scheckter, and now 2 laps to go. He was 12 seconds behind. Two laps to go, less than that now as they head out on the anti-penultimate lap, lap 29 of this circuit. And, well, just 12 miles to decide it and 7 seconds to make up for Thomas Enge. I'll tell you what, he's not going to get past Thomas Scheckter easily, but he does have the advantage over Scheckter, is that even if Scheckter is ahead on the last of the long straights, Enge has got him dead to rights in the stadium complex, and Scheckter's only chance will be to turn in, not even expecting to use the track, but aim the car at the grass at the apex of every turn, and then allow it to wash out wide so that Scheckter is on the inside and Enge's got nowhere to go. But I think the writing is on the wall for Thomas Scheckter, and he may lose the lead even before they start the last lap. So here we are at the end of lap 30, just one more to go after this one. Scheckter, you'd give good money to think what he's thinking right now, but I know that he fears the worst for his son's chances of winning this race. No more so than does Thomas. Thomas Enge is right with him. The two McLarens nose to tail as they start the last lap. 1 to go. They'll be side by side at the line. Enge's got the drive and he's got the place. Enge leads. All Scheckter can do now is watch him drive away and pray that he makes another mistake, but I don't think that he will do. Thomas Enge retakes the lead, and by 1 lap, that was the right call to go onto slicks when he did. The very first of those to change when it became apparent that rain wasn't coming back. And, well, maybe even if he changed a lap later, Scheckter would have had no chance to get back on terms. He did everything he could to hang on, but on lap 30, Enge setting the fastest lap, including passing his teammate for the lead. He's weaving around all over there under acceleration out of the Jim Clark curve, but now he's left the wettest bit of the track behind him, Gareth, and for him it's plain sailing.
Well, be careful, because if you let your concentration lapse, that's when mistakes get made, but yeah, he should be pretty much home and dry now.
Well, there are the MySAP.com team, and they are waiting to welcome home, not just for the first time this year, a winner, but something that I'm sure not many of them would have put money on before they left home to come to the racetrack. A 1-2 for the McLaren Junior team at Hockenhien. It's been a 3000 wet running out of the practice session and making them qualify late in the evening. A bizarre wet weather start and wet weather end to it, and a rain-stricken race as well. But it will be a McLaren 1-2 here, barring any kind of phenomenal disasters, and I'm sure Jody Schecter's phone will start ringing any moment now. It's going to be Thomas Enge that wins it from Thomas Scheckter. Mark Webber will be in third place, and I think Andrea Piccini will get 3 valuable points for Kit Jensen Racing in 4th spot. Christian Colby will be 5th, and behind them, well, Nicolas Minassian a long way down, but it's all about Thomas Enge now. Look, you can't even see Thomas Scheckter in sight, so much better with the slick tyres. Not the photo op that they would have wanted, but first and second for the McLaren Junior team. And are they happy? It looks as though they're quite content with themselves with that one. Good call all round, good car on the setup, good call too on how they use their tyres. As you said, Gareth, it looks as though they hedged their bets. 1 on slicks, 1 not. If the weather changed, bad luck Thomas Enge, good luck Thomas Scheckter. If it didn't, okay guys, sort it out for yourselves. A very, very good race from both drivers. And at last, McLaren have got something to be jubilant about. It's been a long, tough season for them. 7 races where they have struggled and struggled. And now, finally at Hockenhien, where perhaps to the senior arm of the McLaren operation, it's most important of all, the F3000 team has won. And I think Andre Coto, either running out of talent or tyre there, not quite sure which, perhaps a last lap lunge on Mario Haberfeld just going wrong, as Haberfeld probably ran wide away from the apex, and Coto, I would imagine, on the outside line had nowhere to go. Whatever, it's a very well-deserved victory for Thomas Enge, and second place for teammate Thomas Scheckter. Mark Webber in third place behind the 2 McLarens, gains valuable points for his championship challenge. He gets 4 points, and that moves him from 17 up to 21 points. And that means that he is still third in the championship. Behind him, Justin Wilson and David Saelens, who were on 12 points, didn't score. Darren Manning didn't score. Sébastien Bourdais didn't score. So nobody has actually got very close at all to the Leeds trio in the championship. The joint championship leaders, Nicolas Minassian, had a real struggle with tyres. Bruno Junqueira's gearbox put him out of the race, so they didn't score at all, but they are still 17 points ahead of Mark Webber, and that's an awful lot for the Aussie to make up, bearing in mind that there are only 20 more points on offer if he wins both races. So he can't win the championship. It is now down to 2 drivers, Nicolas Minassian and Bruno Junqueira, but Webber still fighting for third place in the series, which for your first year in the championship is not bad at all. Well, Thomas Enge in his 3rd year in this series, and the Czech absolutely delighted. Belts off there and saluting the crowd. Very, very happy indeed with his race, and I'm sure feeling thoroughly vindicated with that choice. When he spun, it looked as though he may have thrown away any chance to capitalise on his slick tyres, but in the end he kept his head, kept it all together, and there are some very, very happy people wearing grey uniforms this afternoon. Well, there you go. Congratulations also for JB Scheckter. His son still with a chance of winning the British Formula 3 title. He was racing at Croft in Darlington last weekend, and back here in F3000, leading the race, shooting for pole, and in the end started second on the grid and second on the podium. Not bad for your second race in F3000. And he will go back next weekend to race in the British Formula 3 Championship again. And as I said in Austria, maybe it's a good thing to take his mind away from the melting pot of a championship battle, which is so close in Britain. And so it turned out to be, at least in Croft. He was seemingly rejuvenated, and I think this success here as well will send him back to the British Championship with even more determination and motivation to run down the leader, Antonio Pizzonia, and make it a fight all the way to the end. But this man, Thomas Enge, his first career Formula 3000 victory, and this will be a weekend that he will remember for all the right reasons, probably for as long as he lives. Well, Gareth, if we'd spoken in Austrian, I'd said to you, I bet you 100 quid McLaren will be first and second at the next race. You'd have taken it like a shot, wouldn't you?
Absolutely right, yeah.
You'd have given me so many odds you wouldn't have been able to afford to fly home tonight. But there it is, McLaren dominating qualifying and in the race. Interesting little trivia bit there, of course, that where they have their normal sponsor's logo replaced by the driver's name makes it very hard to tell the drivers apart, because the cars have the same name on and so do the suits. Neither of them even have an H in it to make the difference. The two Thomases, well, what a great weekend they've had. They really have done very well indeed, and Thomas Scheckter hasn't been overawed by the deal at all, and probably justifiably not either. I think he's, you know, the experienced racing driver that he is. He's worked his way up through the junior categories. His brother Toby before him, his father of course, and he's been imbued with that, you know, Formula One is an accepted part of life growing up, and his dad's there with him to, you know, help him through all those difficult moments, and as you expect at this level, a very mature young man, and shown great talent here as well this weekend, I think, as well. Well, there are the final positions. Christian Colby gets 5th, his first point of the year, I think I'm right in saying. I can't see any others, and good for the Dams team. Enrique Bernoldi 6th, Nicolas Minassian, we got pretty close, didn't he?
He did,
pretty close, look at that. 4.35 to 4.54. He was a couple of hundredths away from a point in 6th place, which would have made a lot of difference to him right now, and a lot of difference maybe at the end of the championship. And because in a fortnight, we're at Budapest in Hungary on the 12th of August, and then a fortnight after that. Well, what better place to finish a tight racing championship than Spa-Francorchamps, one of the greatest tracks in the world, and that's where we will be in 4 weekends' time. Well, there is our man Mathieu getting the hot scoop from the horse's mouth. You'll be able to see all of the details of this weekend's race in Racing Line on Thursday evening, the highlights and all the post-race interviews. You'll find out exactly what Thomas Enge thought of that, and the rest of them as well. Well, Thomas Enge Gareth looking pretty pleased with himself, quite relaxed, and
yeah, rightly so. It was an excellent drive all round. I mean, he looked very comfortable all through the race when it was wet or dry, and I think it's a deserved victory.
I do wonder what they'll be able to do when they go to Budapest, because when you get to the Hungaroring, the chances of rain are reasonably slight, I think. It's a pretty technical track, but how demanding is it on the setup of the car? Can you live with a car that's not quite...
It's a bit of a go-kart track, so someone like Enge will do well there, because he gets hold of the car by the scruff of the neck and drags it round after him. The difficulty is, obviously, as everyone knows, it's not an overtaking circuit, so qualifying is all important. So they'll have to make sure that the car is pretty good from when they arrive, because you only get two half-hour sessions. But no, I think now he's got this win under his belt, it'll do his confidence a world of good, because they come close with a couple of good qualifying performances, but never hasn't quite clicked for them. But now he's had this result, I think he'll be up there. I
think the whole McLaren team will be enjoying this. Look, tears there from their team members, and Joe Ramirez there, who has seen more McLaren victories than pretty much anybody who's ever been associated with the team, I think. He was there in the days when he came over to Europe with Pedro Rodriguez. In the 60s, he was there through the great days of Emerson Fittipaldi and James Hunt. He was there with Teddy Mayer, and he's been there ever since. Well, now a rare opportunity to enjoy the Czech national anthem. Beautiful piece of music, the anthem of the Czech Republic, and Thomas Enge, I'm sure, starting to well up inside there as the adrenaline ebbs away and he hears his national anthem ringing out from the top step of a Formula 3000 podium, something I'm sure he's wanted for a long while. Tomas are there on the left-hand side of the picture, and Mark Webber, the second and third place men, receive their trophies as well. And Webber, of course, well, from third on the grid with the two McLaren drivers ahead of him, I'm sure he felt that he had a good chance, but he did say before the race second place or third place would be a good result if the conditions weren't favourable, and I think it was a pretty good result for all three men. They were certainly the class of the field. They got away from everybody else, and no one ever came close to them. But the man who gambled best, Tomas Enge, wins the lot. And so that's it from Hockenheim, from myself, Martin Haven, and from Gareth Rees. Gareth, another interesting race. I don't think we've had a boring one so far this year.
No, it was a good race. I mean, unfortunately, if someone looked at the qualifying grid and the race result, they'd think it was just processional, because it was 1-2-3 start, 1-2-3 finish. But no, it was an excellent race. And it looks like it might go to the wire, the championship race, so it should be a good finish to the season.
Well, I wonder who's going to hit form. Maybe Enge will win the next two, and we'll see a very bizarre finish. Well, we'll leave you with some musical highlights of the programme. Join us again on Friday night in a fortnight's time for qualifying from the Hungaroring, and Gareth and I will be back again a fortnight from today on Saturday at 2:30 for the race, the 9th and penultimate round of the championship. Until then, from the both of us, it's goodbye.